Hey friends, thanks for joining me again. And I got a question a while back when I called out for the Q&A about homeschool. So they asked some questions about homeschool, and I figured if it's something that, people are interested in learning about, it's something I've been doing for quite some time now, and so I might as well maybe put out a few videos. So I'm going to start putting those out on Sundays. If it is something that interests you, if you are currently homeschooling, if you have younger kids that you're thinking about homeschooling as they grow a little older, maybe you don't even have kids yet, but you're thinking of maybe homeschooling them when you do, etc. If homeschooling is something you want to learn more about, Sundays are the days to look for those videos. So I have compiled a list of reasons why people in general, these aren't necessarily true to me or my family specifically, but reasons why people would want to homeschool and reasons why people shouldn't homeschool. The first one would be because schools can be overcrowded. If you have an issue with that in your area, that's certainly a reason you would want to homeschool, because it can make it to where the teachers just don't have enough time per student. And it's not their fault. If a teacher usually has, 22, 23 students, and then they close down a major school in your area, and then all of a sudden the classroom has 32 students, the teacher just doesn't have as much time to cater to each child to make sure that they all are getting the learning that they need. And so the overcrowding makes it to where, the child may get less good of an education. Speaking of education, the next reason would be because there was a bad school, or a school that gets in general test scores that are just kind of low. So if your school gets really awful test scores, that means the kids are in general below average for what they're supposed to be on their grade level. If you have, a school near you that you would be forced to put your kids into that gets poor test scores, they're probably not going to get as good of an education as they would if they were in either a better school or homeschool. Another reason would be if you disagree with some of the stuff the schools teach in general. A lot of people will just disagree with some of the stuff that they teach or some of the stuff that they don't teach. And it doesn't have to be, but it can be related to religious beliefs. So say some people just don't feel like, the school is teaching something that, fits with their family lifestyle and their religious beliefs, and so they'll choose to homeschool for that reason, and that's totally fine and acceptable. Maybe it may be that you want to teach your child more morals and character, and that's not just something that they teach much in school, and so you would prefer to keep them at home and instill some of those things, because those can be really important too. Of course, in life, it's not just reading, math, social studies, it's also honesty and how to work hard and things like that that'll also make them a good, valuable employee later on in life. Just general family reasons. Maybe someone lives too far from a school. It just doesn't make sense when you live out in the boonies to, bus your child into school if it's going to be, a 1-2 hour, or you have to drive that far every day to take them there. So, or maybe, there's a family that has a disability or a child that has a disability that they feel like they need something that the school can't provide. That's definitely another reason why people will choose to do that. Bullies is another big one. Bullying is huge. In fact, here in our city, not long ago, we actually had a little boy who committed suicide because of bullying. While that is super, super sad, it is a reason why some people will choose to homeschool, because sometimes you'll put your kid into a public school and then they end up just getting bullied really bad. So there's that. And then of course there is, if your child is the one with the behavioral problems, maybe they act out a lot and stuff like that, and so they're getting in trouble and the teachers are constantly keeping them after and that sort of thing. And so that may be a reason you want to homeschool too, is to just give your child a better chance at trying to, correct those behavioral issues there instead of being in that school atmosphere. And then of course there's the bigger things that tend to occur later on in life. So there's like, social pressures which can push people to do drugs or to drink alcohol or, premarital sex or whatever, your family may be concerned about. That's not something that can really occur much when you have your child in homeschool, because they don't have those same social pressures at home. There are some good reasons why people maybe should feel like that's not a good fit for them. And it's okay, because every family is unique, and I think every family should definitely do what works for them. So that's definitely something, important to consider too. So the first one would be if one parent doesn't agree. There's going to be a lot of stress and strife and fighting in that family, so that may be an issue where it may not be the best choice to homeschool there, depending on what they can work out, of course. if the child doesn't want to homeschool. So if you've put them into public school and then you say, you know, I want to take you back out, and they're afraid they're going to miss their friends or, you know, some of the other stuff they had going on there, that may not make it to where they're all that successful with their schooling. So definitely consider the needs and the desires of the child as well, because if they rebel, no matter how good you try to teach them or how good of a curriculum you get, it's just not going to work out if they're trying to, you know, put their brakes on and make sure it's not successful so that they can get put back into public school. Another bad reason to homeschool is just because someone else does it, just because your sister does it, just because your aunt does it, just because your neighbor does it, just because all of the women in your church group does it. It doesn't mean that it's right for your family, and so don't feel like you have to homeschool just because the other people in your life do it as well. Another reason would be if someone has a special needs child. So say you have a child that has a disability, you know, maybe you have a child that has, you know, severe autism, or a child that has, you know, Down syndrome or something like that. And you may feel like the special programs that you have available to you in the public school system may be better for your child. They may be able to teach them in a way that, you know, would be better for them, because you maybe don't feel like you have the training and, you know, the expertise needed in that area to teach that child in the way that they need. And so if you have a child with a disability, it may not be a good fit to homeschool them also. If there are certain sports or just programs in general, maybe your child wants to join the football team, or they want to, you know, be in a band or whatever. If they want to do those sorts of things and you can't do them in homeschool, then that may be another reason you'll want to consider public school instead. If your children fight a lot, if you have a lot of sibling rivalry, that is definitely going to make it harder to homeschool. It's going to make it harder for the children to have a good, you know, environment where they can learn, and it's also going to wear on the mom or dad who's teaching homeschool to constantly have to be the referee as everybody's fighting all the time. There could just be personality differences, you know, maybe your child learns a different way than you want to teach, or, you know, something else, just things just don't jive, or if there's just a constant power struggle between you and your child, it's definitely going to make it a lot harder to be successful, you know, homeschool. Maybe some people don't have time, you know, maybe there's a single mom or whatnot who just has to work, and it makes more sense to do so while her children are in school. So it just doesn't work for everyone, especially if you have, you know, a two-income household, the mom and dad will have to work or whatever. Just in general, you don't have the time. This is one of the #1 reasons why I've seen many homeschool parents not be successful with it, is because they felt like they wanted to homeschool, but then in the end they just didn't have the time, and so their kid didn't end up getting the quality education that they were hoping to. So definitely consider whether or not you have the time, because homeschooling is a big investment in your time. Money is another one, but I honestly don't believe this is a good reason not to homeschool, because as you're going to see in some of my next upcoming videos, we homeschool very frugally. We are very frugal with how much we're going to spend on our curriculum, you know, and the supplies that we use and things like that. But typical homeschooling does require a fair amount of money. The curriculums, you know, if you choose a different one than us, they can be a little bit pricey. And so when you send your kids to public school, all of that stuff is included in your taxes usually. It's included in, here where we live in Colorado, it's included in our property taxes. So homeschooling and then having to buy all that on top of it, you know, homeschooling doesn't reduce our property taxes. So in a sense, we're paying for schooling twice. Once for our children, and then the second one to fund the public schools that we're not sending our children to. So money may be a factor depending on the situation. And then the last one would be if you have a difficulty staying positive, because again, homeschool is going to be a big investment in your time, but it's also going to be a big investment in, you know, our abilities. So we're going to have to learn. We're going to have to, you know, deal with our children who are humans too. They have good days. They have bad days. They have things they're good at. They have things they're not good at. They have things that they're going to struggle with. And so if you have a difficulty being patient or staying positive in, you know, adverse situations, that is definitely something you're going to want to consider, just your own personality and how you can handle things, because sometimes your children are constantly, you know, wearing on you a little bit, you know, not wanting to do this and not wanting to do that, and you're trying to like motivate them and trying to motivate them and trying to motivate them all these hours throughout the day. You're trying to, you know, push them to get something done, but they're being really slow, and then they're fighting, and so there can be a lot of things that come up. So if you have a difficulty staying positive, it's going to be a whole lot more difficult, you know, for you to be an effective teacher and for them to learn effectively. So that's definitely the last thing I would want to have you consider. So there you go. There is the list of reasons why a lot of people do consider homeschooling, and a lot of very valid reasons why people wouldn't want to. And again, it's okay. You know, I don't believe in blanket advice on this channel, of course, as I've mentioned many times. So for some people it is going to work out for them, and for other people it's just not. And that's okay. So if you want to try and homeschool and you would like to learn a little bit more about it, stay tuned for next Sunday. Thank you for watching this video. I'm Frugal Gringo, and we'll see you next time.